What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? Repping America, the center, and common sense. And there is a lack of common sense in California. We're going to get to some of that and a little bit more, but mostly in the state of California where, I mean, are they even trying? Are they even trying to impress us at all? Or do they know they have a one-party system and it doesn't matter as long as you stick a D next to your name? It doesn't matter what you do or don't do. You get reelected. It's crazy. Let's kick it off. So one of my top targets is the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America. They're not what they appear to be at all. They're for anarchy. Why do they want anarchy? They want anarchy because when the streets are just too crazy and things are too expensive and everybody feels the pressure of what they like to label big business coming down on them, the socialists want to swoop in, seize ultimate control. You know, the more they rant about Donald Trump not wanting to run, not wanting to have an election, and he's just going to insert himself as the king, that's their plan. And a few of them are finally waking up. Not a few Democrat socialists, but a few Democrats. Because that's the problem. This is Democratic Representative from Texas, Henry Cuellar. He rejects the DSA agenda. He issued a warning claiming that the DSA is using the Democrat Party. They're trying to use the safe Democratic seats to run in. And they also know that the Democrat Party is inadequate, but they're using us or trying to use the Democratic Party as a vehicle so later they could set up their own platform. Yeah. As a Democrat, he rejects these things. As he says, they want to get rid of the Senate. They want to get rid of ICE. They want to defund the police. They want to get rid of certain constitutional items, probably the Second Amendment, so we can't fight back. They want to have open borders also. They want to get rid of prisons. And he noted that a lot of times these DSA candidates don't discuss those things. They discuss affordability, housing, the cost of living. See, it's a scam that they're running. That's what they're doing. They're running a scam. They're saying the things like Mandami over in New York says, you know, oh, I'm going to make it affordable. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Just give me control. Because that's what they want. They want control. They don't want to have elections. They don't want to have to put their platform out there so people can decide if these people are right for them. Because they know that no right-thinking American, correct-thinking American, let's say, would ever vote for their shenanigans. And that's what it is. Like Coolio goes on to say here, they don't even have their own party, but they're trying to use the Democrat Party. I reject them completely. And he's run against them in Texas through 2 primaries. They spent over $20 million. They get a lot of money because they talk about the things that resonate with people. But at the same time, they're not actually going to do anything about it. Look at some of the things Mandami's already tried over there. You know, they're things that drive away money. They drive away business owners. They drive away entrepreneurship. Nobody wants to start a business where on day one, you are going to be taxed so heavily with fees and permits and regulations and all of these things that you have to get in a row. And they have the support of a lot of rich people because a lot of rich people just don't know their history. Whenever there's been a revolution throughout human history, they always get the useful idiots to campaign for them. But as soon as they get into power, they get rid of the useful idiots because they already know these are people who are motivated for change, which I think is a great thing. But the problem is once you get into power, if you start screwing up, those very same people who put you in power are going to come after you. Look at the Iranian Revolution back in the 70s. They recruited a lot of socialists. They recruited a lot of green, a lot of environmentalists. And as soon as they were able to overthrow the Shah and seize power, these are the people who were locked up. Places like Czechoslovakia, you had a lot of the financially well-off elite supporting the movement. And as soon as the movement succeeded, those very same rich people were either driven from the country or arrested or murdered. And that's how it goes. That's what's wrong with these types of radical movements. Anyhow. So when we're talking about the DSA, their ultimate goal looks a lot like California, where everybody in power is either a Democrat or wedded to the Democrats. So no matter what they do, people continue to support them. They won't dare vote for a Republican in most places in California, like Los Angeles. They're just not going to, despite all of the evidence that the Democrats, are failing. And we have evidence right here. Californians hate Gavin Newsom's gas vehicle ban. Right now, 66% of adults and likely voters oppose Newsom's order, but he's doubling down on it. Part of the reason why EVs have lost appeal is federal tax credits. Okay, I don't know if that's really, when you're buying a very expensive car, if you're getting a little bit back, I don't think that really makes that big of a difference for the average Californian. But the real problem is 6 out of 10 people say they feel that utility prices in their part of California are a major problem. The number keeps going up, and the reality is if you have an electric vehicle, right, that electricity is not free. See, these energy costs not only drive down EV sales, but they contribute to the high cost of housing and drive up the prices of most other products. When you put regulations on the trucks that deliver the food, when you put regulations on building new homes and the regulatory process that it has to go through, and the fact that all kinds of different people can sue to delay the project, it's really hard to make cheap housing. In most parts of the country, to build a new house is somewhere around a couple $100 per square foot. In California, it's $1,000. We're way out of whack with the rest of the country, and a lot of it is these processes, these environmental things. We're so scared of blowing up the world that we're going to blow up the world. The declining EV appeal is in spite of the fact that California is facing sky-high gas prices. But what researchers have found is that at least gas pricing seems transparent to consumers, more so than how the utilities are. So remember, the utilities had to spend a lot of money to go green. Again, that was Gavin Newsom. That was one party. That was nobody standing up and saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. Nobody being able to challenge it. Because the challenge has to come from independents or Republicans. Those are two dead parties in California. Yes, there are pockets of conservatives, but there are way more. And now that we let Gavin Newsom and the state government redraw the maps, we're going to see less and less representation. Now, I don't disagree with everything the Democrats stand for, but one thing I will say is that a lot of what Democrats stand for has been accomplished. And now they're just progressing. I've said this time and time again. They just keep progressing down the road until they drive off a cliff. And we've hit that cliff. Another great example of these hidden DSA people. Karen Bass suggests that homeless use meth for protection. She said this in a City Hall press conference. She said it out loud. You sleep out on the streets for a couple of weeks and tell me you're not going to stay sane or use meth so that you don't go to sleep to protect yourself. What? Let's be honest. Most of the people who are on the streets, who we would consider, the average Californian would consider a problem, are people who have massive mental or drug problems that are not being treated. They can't live at home. They've tried to live with friends and family, but it doesn't work because they're fucking crazy. I mean, that's what it's like. Wait, I have a brother who's doing it right now, who's driven my mom out of her home and is now renting it out to his friends so he could continue to do what he wants to do. He doesn't have a job. That's crazy. So what are you supposed to do in those circumstances? And for her to say, oh, no, these people go out on the streets and then they start using meth. I don't really see that correlation, okay? I have some experience with drug use, all right? I know what it's about, okay? You don't just pick it up because you're out on the streets, all right? You just don't. And it's this kind of sound bites that they put out where now their people could say, no. See, meth isn't driving people to the streets. The streets are driving people to meth. Really? I mean, really, raise your hand if you believe that. Bass is taking another shot here, Her campaign website boasts in the 3 years of the Bass administration, LA achieved its first ever back-to-back decreases in homelessness. Yeah, well, that was probably based on falsehoods. There were reports saying that the homeless in California are undercounted by about 30%. But anyhow, you know, the LA Homeless Service Authority released its delayed homeless count for 2026. And halfway through the year, it's already gone up 3.4%. The number of unsheltered people living on the streets or in cars went up 7.9%. So, yeah, your programs aren't working. And you're allowing the LA Homeless Service Authority to do your count for you, even though we already know that they're corrupt. And another way that they keep their corruption kind of secret is we found out that Mayor Bass's press team uses disappearing WhatsApp messages. One of the reasons is they had this guy, Newsom, who worked as an unpaid consultant for the press office of Karen Bass. And he quit his job and he went to work for Lineage. They just had a big, giant, massive cold food storage facility in Boyle Heights burned down. Millions or tons of food just rotting, stinking up the city, polluting the air. And he's working for them but reporting back, and they're using disappearing messages so that they can't be called to task. They're covering their tracks. That's the problem. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care. But be honest about what you stand for. Be transparent about what you're doing. And for God's sakes, stop just throwing money at a problem without even looking at what works. Would you ever do that in your budget? I mean, think about it. If you went to the store and you consistently bought grape jelly, and nobody in your family ate grape jelly, and then you threw out the grape jelly because it got moldy, would you buy grape jelly again? I mean, that's all it is. That's what the city does. They keep buying the grape jelly even though nobody eats it. It's not working. I don't care what letter you have next to your name. If your plans work, they work. I can't deny that. I have given people like Joe Biden and Gavin, Newsom, and Karen Bass, I've given them credit when they do things that work, but when they keep throwing good money at bad, something has to be done. But what can be done when the Democrat Party has California on lockdown? The DSA is going to move in. They're going to look for vulnerable seats. They're going to look for guaranteed seats. And they're going to rise. And they're going to sow their chaos so that we turn over control to the government. Pure and simple. That's what the evidence shows me. I'm sorry. We talk about these failed experiments. If an experiment fails, you should go back to the drawing board, but not when you really don't have to worry about getting reelected. I mean, right now, Karen Bass looks like she's going to get reelected. How? We're going to get to another person. How do these people get reelected when they have such miserable I can't even think of the word right now. Miserable results. And they get reelected. See, you're hearing this because I just shoot from the hip. I don't go back and try to edit my mistakes. I want you to know I'm just a person. I'm not some polished talking head. I'm just a dude who's seeing a lot of things wrong with a state that I love. A state that I'll probably be leaving because it's not going to get any better under this one-party system. But back to the point. I think this came from the California Post. I know, they're right-wing. I get it. But what they're reporting are numbers and facts, okay? The MacArthur Park trash disgrace. The scales don't lie. This is one park in Los Angeles, okay? One park. One of dozens, if not hundreds of parks in Los Angeles. MacArthur Park produced nearly 13 million pounds of trash and hazardous waste in 2025. Including 71 tons of human waste. 71 tons of human waste. That is 71 elephants or sedan cars. Whichever makes it easier for you. But I like elephants. All right. 71 tons of just human waste. That is 2 tons of human waste per acre. That's what our parks are turning into? A giant fucking toilet? And it's hard to think, as they say here in the Post, it's hard to think anything could be worse until you consider that city workers also hauled off 12 tons of discarded needles and syringes. Hundreds of thousands of syringes in 1 year. A silent, heavy testimony to the scale of the drug problem that city officials have unexcusably encouraged. Most of those needles were given away by the city itself under a program supported by the local member of city council, Eunice Hernandez. Yeah, this chick. How did she get reelected? In 2023, Hernandez diverted $25,000 from scholarship programs into free needle and crack pipes for addicts, ostensibly to help them avoid overdosing and transmitting diseases. They have a disease. It's called addiction. Look it up. Ask Dr. Drew. Ask anybody who knows anything. Addiction is disease. And instead of trying to fix the disease, we're fueling it. And that's what happens. You know, they also reported that in 2025 in MacArthur Park, 50 tons of flammable materials and nearly 10 tons of toxins and poisons. In our park, a park where people who go to work 9 to 5 and try to raise a family and want to go over and toss the frisbee around in a park, they have to deal with 71 tons of human poop. They have to deal with tons of toxic and dangerous chemicals. They have to deal with tons of needles. They're worried about, our city council in LA is worried about addicts catching a disease from needles, but they have no problem with children contracting diseases from needles. They don't give a shit. They want the chaos because the more chaotic it gets, the more people want to rely on the government. I don't. I have that situation with my brother going on right now. All right? He's fucking cuckoo crazy. The police won't do anything. Adult Protective Services won't do anything. The court won't do anything. It's up to us. We're in siege mentality. Day in and day out. We're keeping doors locked. We're keeping certain things handy. Because the government is failing us. Ronald Reagan said it best. The scariest words. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Look what they've done. I mean, okay, so the city of Los Angeles has this thing called the Comprehensive Cleaning and Rapid Engagement, CARE Plus workers. They went to MacArthur Park, one park, 7,111 times in 2025. That's 19 times a day they went to clean up shit at this park. That alone, just that whole care thing, is $56 million. That's a lot of scholarships. That's a lot of good. What do we do? What do we do with these people? I've already said it. You build a big structure way out in the boonies where you can get people care, you could house people, you leave empty lots for them to tent, you leave empty lots for them to park their RVs, you get sanitation hookups so they can drain the RVs, you put up porta potties, you put up showers, but you got to move these people away from the everyday people. People who pay taxes, people who pay property taxes, deserve to have parks and schools that are free of these just random crazy people. You should not have to go to a park that has been covered in 71 tons of human poop. What is so hard to understand about that? Okay, maybe you don't like Republican ideas. Maybe you hate Trump. You like tons of poop and hazardous waste and needles and flammable materials in your park? Because that's what you're voting for. You're not voting for a Democrat who wants to clean up the park and get the homeless off the streets. No. You vote for a lady like Karen Bass who can't accomplish shit. And even when she can sort of tweak the numbers to make it look like she's accomplishing something, it all falls apart. Like they say here, the worst part, LA voted for this. The voters of City Council District 1 reelected Hernandez to a second term last month. The Democrat Socialist of America-backed incumbent won an outright majority. She won't even face a November runoff. She took $250,000 in scholarship money and gave it to drug addicts to inject into their arms. And you're voting for this. Now, here's a great one. Santa Monica. Santa Monica, a place with the pier, right? Big Ferris wheel out on the pier. You see it in Grand Theft Auto. They're falling apart because of their homelessness. Problems there. Businesses can't survive when you've got a bunch of bums shitting in front of the restaurant. But no, what they want to do is put up cameras to catch vehicles illegally parking or stopping in the cyclist side of the road. Yeah, cars blocking bike lanes. Why? Because the socialists would love for us all to be riding bikes in public transport. We would have a lack of freedom of movement. They could shut us down. If they shut down the trains and the buses and nobody has cars, how do you make it to Sacramento to protest? You see? If they want to implement something that'll get us to rise up in arms, they could shut down the buses and the trains, and what are we supposed to do, ride our bikes? But more than that, they're not trying to protect the bicyclists. They're trying to get more money to blow on their stupid ass shit. Across this state, across this country, you have broke ass cities and counties that are broke, and they're still talking about reparations. Because that's a DSA selling point. Oh, come with us. We'll get you some cash. No, you won't. You're not going to get any cash. It's illegal to give out cash based on simply racial makeup. Most of the people weren't directly affected. And when you start saying, well, who deserves reparations, that list grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. Lots of people. History has not been kind to minorities. I admit that. The only way to fix that is to move forward. But, they don't want to do that. They don't want to move forward. They don't want to admit their mistakes. Unless they're really, really backed into a corner. Such as what's going on in California with healthcare. Here's the headline. Healthcare fraud in California has made Medi-Cal fiscally unsustainable. And so this is an interview with a lady, Sally Pipes. Great name. She's the president, CEO, and Thomas W. Smith Fellow in Healthcare Policy at the Pacific Research Institute. Okay, so they're just researching what's going on. Medicare fraud and abuse is one of the worst things facing the states, in particular California and Minnesota. Yeah. Their research, using an estimate from the Paragon Health Institute and the Economic Policy Innovation Center, suggests there was over $1 trillion in cumulative federal Medicare improper payments across the nation between 2015 and 2024. Yeah. And why is it bad in California? Well, we got about 15 million people on Medi-Cal. And right now, we're spending $351 billion. Think of the good that money can do if it wasn't being stolen. And taxpayers are hurt. This is what Pipes goes on to say. Taxpayers are hurt because they're paying higher and higher taxes, and they're supporting a program that is full of fraud and abuse and not taking care of the vulnerable people who it was set up to take care of. And this was through the Democrats. I mean, yes, they're doing some stuff now. The U.S. Department of Justice busted a guy who was responsible for $270 million. They've revoked more than 280 hospice licenses due to fraud. They could have seen that fraud. There was hospice after hospice registering at the same address. Pipes believes that the healthcare fraud in California started in March of 2010 when Medicare eligibility expanded under ACA. In 2015, the program further expanded by Governor Jerry Brown, allowing undocumented immigrant children to receive health care. During the COVID pandemic, right, it rose even more. The federal government was covering 90% of those costs. It was supposed to end when the pandemic ended, but it didn't. And in January 1st, 2024, Gavin Newsom allowed all undocumented immigrants, regardless of age, to become eligible for Medi-Cal. That expansion alone allowed roughly 1.7 million undocumented immigrants to enroll in Medi-Cal, and it's set to cost the state $8.5 billion annually. Now, Pipes, who wrote this, by the way, is an immigrant from California. She went through all the steps and became an American. She goes on to say, when you're covering undocumented people, California is a state where there's a lot of fraud and abuse because there's no oversight. It's just the perfect thing for people who are fraudulent to take advantage of and abuse the program. And that California answer, the billionaires tax, which is causing billionaires to flee, billionaires to hide their money a little bit better. Why not? It's private sector. You know, I had an argument with my daughter about what is more concerning, government salaries or CEO salaries. She argues CEO salaries. I argue government. You know why? Because the private sector is the private sector. I do what you're going to do, okay? If I don't like your company, I'm not going to buy your product. I don't buy Nike, okay? But the public sector is my money, the grinder's money, the people out there working the 9 to 5s and then going home, taking a nap and working the 8 to 1. There's people out there who are working so hard to fund this bullshit. And what are they doing? They just let it go out the window. And of course, talking about undocumented immigrants, and you know, the reason why that's important, by the way, when we're speaking about healthcare, is undocumented immigrants don't necessarily have social security cards or proper ID and stuff like that. They have a much easier time just kind of remaining ghosts in the back. And people can use these ghosts and say, oh, we've got all these people here. You know, oh, this person, this person, this person. When there's really not any proof that that person exists. So, California is trying to vote on voter ID. And this reminds me of when we wanted to repeal the gas tax and Rob Bonta, or whoever it was at the time, the Attorney General, changed it to the Road Safety Act. See, the Attorney General here in California could change it. When they started collecting signatures for the voter ID, it was simply stated as establishes additional voter identification and citizenship verification requirements. Okay. They got the signatures and he changed it to prohibit citizens from voting unless they present government-issued identification. See, if you only read a portion, you'll see establishes additional voter identification versus prohibits citizens from voting. That's what they do. Nobody calls him out on it. He's got a D next to his name, so he gets all the votes. Meanwhile, this very same Ds who are just by default getting a lot of people's votes pulled the plug on air conditioning upgrades in schools, leaving students to sweat it out. They had a program called CalShape, and it was a tax on our utilities, okay? So we were paying into this thing. They cut the program short in 2024. They're still working through it, but it's still ongoing. When they pulled the plug on that, okay, after 4 years, only 172 of the 4,500 schools that needed upgrades actually got the upgrades. Some people were able to repair existing conditioners, air conditioning units to keep them running, but they were already ineffective, costing the state more money, of course, in energy, because when you have to run something twice as long or twice as hard, it takes more energy, right? So why did they pull the funds? Well, the commission attributed it to budget constraints. What? This is money that we were taxed on that was set aside to put air conditioning units in schools or fix existing ones. So how does that factor into your budget? I don't understand. The audit found out that it was just they couldn't handle accepting applications. They were inundated by so many of them. What? So here you go. So the process requires the commission to return unspent funds to the utilities so that we get them back, but they don't want to do that. Lawmakers are now weighing whether to spend the $70 million in interest on the funds towards a virtual power plant energy program. What? Why don't you spend the $70 million on air conditioning units for kids in school? It's hard enough to go to school without sweating. I sweat all day long with my job, but I hate it when I come home and I'm playing Minecraft and I'm sweating. This is Janelle Harris, the founder of the Clean Air Allies, a nonprofit that advocates for healthy air in schools. We're going to kneecap this program out of some philosophical argument about how programs should be funded. We brag all the time in the comment section. Oh, California is the fourth largest economy. Okay, and our kids are sweating to death in their classrooms? Get the money to them. Simplify. Remove some of these dumbass regulations. I agree with a lot of regulations that California has. Okay? In some ways, yes, California is safer than a lot of so-called red states. But all we need to do is look across the ocean to Morocco. Morocco is roughly the same size as California. Morocco has roughly the same amount of people as California. Okay? Morocco is run by basically a king who can just say what he wants and it gets done. They built a bullet train. Part of it's not a bullet train because that was existing, so they used it. They cut out all the unnecessary bullshit. And now you could zip along. And some of the distances covered by this bullet train equate to San Diego to San Francisco. They went with a French company. Why didn't California go with a French company? Because the French company wanted to go up to 5. But the state didn't want to do that because we don't own that land. We want to buy land over here and we want to make our friends rich to build this train. They used people who were experienced in building bullet trains. And their bullet train is done, up and running, already completely profitable, very useful, gets people all on the coast of North Africa. Casablanca to Tripoli. We can't do that here. Why? Because we have a corrupt government in California that is beholden to nobody because they have enough people who will just vote for the D. They have enough young and dumb people to buy their Democrat socialist agenda. The problem in America, the problem in California is not big business. It's big government, period. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. So are you. Keep on grinding. Love one another. And when it gets too much, let the beat drop and dance it out.